Chairs No Waiting, episode number 501. It says 10 for 10 years. Two Chairs No Waiting is brought to you by the folks over at weaversdepartmentstore.com. Drop by and check things out. There's got all kinds of cool things over there, like the Make America Mayberry Again bumper sticker. Oh, you got to have that. If you don't want that, it's Halloween time, so head over and pick up the Old Man Rimshaw print. You can hang it up over your fireplace. Oh, just hope your hired man's okay. Head over to weaversdepartmentstore.com and check it out. Two Chairs No Waiting is also brought to you by donations from listeners just like you. The executive producer of tonight's show are our patrons at Patreon. So please, if you like the show, if you like some of the 500 episodes I've already done, think about dropping by and seeing me. Hello, everybody. I'm Allan Newsome, your host for Two Chairs No Waiting. And wow, you can get a Rimshaw print over at Weavers. Who doesn't want a Rimshaw print? Oh my goodness. Well, hey, if you like the Rimshaw print, I'm going to go ahead and, this is not an advertisement. You can head over to the Andy Griffith Show Rerun Watchers Club website. And right there for the month of October, which is ending up here in another week or so, you can pick up pumpkin patterns. I'm going to go ahead and click this link and you'll hear it. You head over to the Old Man Rimshaw's place. And the music will play and the eyes will follow you around. Let me turn the music off or down. Let's just turn it down. There we go. Well, I'll just turn it off. So you can head over there and there's eyes on the page. It'll follow your mouse around when you move it. Then you might even see a floating axe floating through the area. But don't be afraid of any of that stuff, because what this site really is for, Old Man Rimshaw's place. So if you just search for that, more than likely on Google, search for the Old Rimshaw place, you'll probably go here. But you can pick up patterns to make a Barney jack-o'-lantern, a Goober jack-o'-lantern, a Floyd the Barber jack-o'-lantern, or an Opie jack-o'-lantern. All the patterns are available on the page, and the page actually gives you information about kind of how you make it, and you can head over to Pumpkin Masters and get the tools that you'd actually need. But you don't have to use tools. You could just use whatever you got. But head over to imayberry.com and click on the Old Rimshaw place. If you wait too long, you can still pick it up after October's over. But it's free. None of that costs you anything. It's all 100% free and just fun Mayberry stuff. Okay, so head over and pick it up and enjoy yourself. This is what it's all about. It's Halloween. All right, folks, as I said, this is the 10th year. So this episode is called, it says 10 for 10 years. That's right. That's what it says. And folks, 10 years ago, on October the 11th, 2008, wow, the very first episode of Two Chairs No Waiting podcast hit the web. That's right. Since the beginning of the podcast, since it started, 10 years ago, which actually last week would have been our 10th anniversary, but it was our 500th episode. I couldn't do them both in one setting. It just, it didn't work. Wasn't going to work out. But since then, since I started 10 years ago, I've created basically 7 days and 17 hours or so. It's actually, if you want to actually do the math, it's 185 hours and 45 minutes worth of content here on Two Chairs No Waiting. Friends, that's 24-hour days, by the way. 7 24-hour days. So if you listened, you could listen to this podcast every minute for a week and then almost another day. Wow. That I don't encourage that in any form or fashion. I don't believe that is necessary, but you could do it if you would like to. And you could head over and be a part of the actual podcast and, listen to all of it. Now, I did have people coming up to me at back in Mayberry days. Back at Mayberry Days, they kept coming up to me and they said that they had driven to Mayberry Days listening to the podcast. And so I am extremely thankful for that. Thank you for doing that. Hopefully it didn't take you 7 days and a little more to get to Mayberry Days. But if it did, I completely feel for you, because wow, that would be an awful lot of listening to me riding in the car. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for all that you do just to be a part of this show. It really means a lot. Now, back when I started, that first episode was it was called George Lindsay Interview Part 1. Now, since then, I've redone it, because the first, I think, 4 episodes were all George Lindsay. They were all a part of that same series. And back when we started it 10 years ago, everybody's bandwidth was real, it wasn't very good. So the podcast was only about 12 minutes long. So back then, 12 minutes. So that means with me starting it and then ending it, so there was maybe, 8 minutes of content or something that was new. And so over time, I started going back and changing some of those episodes, like this George Lindsay interview that was part of the first episode. I went in and made it a long 1 episode instead of 4 small, short episodes, because people basically got better internet connections. But I thought it would be fun to go back and hear just a little bit of what that episode sounded like. So, friends, we're going to head over, and plus we're going to hear from Allan from the past, a younger version. Maybe the sound wasn't quite as good, I'm not sure. But it definitely wasn't, because I was sitting in my bedroom when I recorded this, so you'll know. I went into my bedroom and I had on big headphones with a microphone that hooked to the headphone, and that's what I'm talking with. And so I couldn't move my head, and so I sound like this when I'm talking. You'll hear it. So we're going to listen to the first portion, which is several minutes long here. We've got 4 minutes or so. I'm gonna cut in as the music is kind of ending, and you're going to get to hear the little bit of this first episode just as nostalgia for me, anyway, going back and hearing the very first episode, and hopefully things have got better. But not only are you going to hear it, you're going to hear the reason I started the podcast and everything. So, Allan, from 10 years ago, let's hear from you. Hello, and welcome to Two Chairs, No Waiting, Episode 1. My name's Allan Newsome, and I want to thank the Mayberry Marching Band for their wonderful rendition of our theme song. I'm sure you all enjoyed that. Especially enjoyed Floyd and whoever it was Andy Gumping in the back there, but looked really good. This podcast is about the Andy Griffith Show and all things related to the Andy Griffith Show and Mayberry. For those that don't know me, my name is Allan Newsome. I'm the webmaster for Mayberry.com and several other Mayberry-related websites, like the Andy Griffith Show Reon Watchers Club, which is tagsrwc.com, as well as weaversdepartmentstore.com. And this podcast is brought to you by weaversdepartmentstore.com. If you go to Weavers, you'll find games, you'll find DVDs of all the seasons of the Andy Griffith Show, as well as Gomer Pyle. We've got Matlock DVDs there as well. You'll find apparel. Oh, just listen to the excitement in Allan's voice. Drop by Mayberry.com and go to the Weavers Department Store link, or just type in weaversdepartmentstore.com into your browser, and it'll take you right there, because they are sponsoring this. And actually, they don't really sponsor it, but I didn't have a sponsor, and I thought I would say that they sponsored it. Sounded better. Anyway, for those that don't know how I got into some of this stuff, how I got into this Mayberry stuff, back in 1993, I decided I wanted to create a website. I wanted to learn how to do HTML. So I tried to think of, what did I want to do? What kind of a web page I wanted to do? A lot of people at the time were going out and making websites about themselves. I really didn't want to make a website about me, but I love the Andy Griffith Show. Really got into it when I was in college, subscribed to the Bullet, got all the back issues. I really, really enjoyed it. So I decided, hey, I'll do a website about the Andy Griffith Show. And at the time, it was just hosted on AOL. It wasn't a domain or anything like that, like it is now. But that was back in '93, not that long after Yahoo started. we went on from there and became Mayberry.com later on, and it's grown into all the sites that you see. If you go to Mayberry.com, there's stuff linked off to it, off of there to all kinds of places. But that's enough about a little background on myself. I want to tell you about the podcast. The podcast is going to be made up of some interviews. I've done interviews with some of the cast members, as well as talk about the Andy Griffith Show and Mayberry in general. I don't want to make the podcast into just an interview type show, but I do want to have interviews as often as I can, and but not just cast members, but maybe with fans of the show and impersonators. You know, we like to call them tribute artists, but they're impersonators by any name that you want to call them. Our name of our podcast, Two Chairs, No Waiting, comes from Floyd and his barbershop. Our first podcast, this episode, is going to be an interview I did with George Lindsay. It's our first interview, and it's my first interview I ever tried to do. And tried to do is key here. It was recorded back in 1998 in Jim Clark's living room in Nashville, Tennessee. Jim Clark is the presiding goober of the Andy Griffith Show Rerun Watchers Club. He started the club along with some other guys. And so we were in Jim's living room up in Nashville, and present in the room was, of course, George Lindsay, Jim Clark, Kenneth Junkin, who now is an Otis Campbell tribute artist, you know, impersonator, and myself. So we were sitting around the room. We're going to break this interview up into 4 parts to try to keep the podcast to a reasonable size. So the next several episodes, you'll be hearing from George and his recollections about the Andy Griffith Show and other things that he's involved in. As I said, this interview was the first time I ever tried
Allan.
to interview anyone.
Have you got any excitement to you?
I had no idea what I was doing. And you may notice that George is basically asking himself questions. He was great in this because he knew I didn't have any idea what I was doing. So I basically set the tape recorder, because it was 1998, set it down there in Jim's living room, and you'll hear me piping up every once in a while, but George basically sat next to the tape recorder and asked himself some questions and got the ball rolling there in Jim's living room. And you'll hear Jim every once in a while answering some stuff in the background if you listen closely. And I'm really sorry about the noisy recording, but it's the best I could do back in 98.
So I'm going to fade this down because they're still talking about, he's still going through. Come on, Allan. Okay, calm down. Calm down. There you go. There you go. So Allan is talking about the interview with George Lindsay that is about to take place. Now, if you'd like to hear that interview, there are great places on the web to go and hear those, and not this place. But you can go and hear the very first episode that you're hearing pieces of right then. You can go and hear them. Or you can go and there's a whole section of George Lindsay interviews that I did where I put this one back together so that it was, instead of 4 pieces, that you could hear it all at one time. So you could definitely go and do that as well. And I would encourage that if you want to do it. I'll have a link in our show notes for you to go and hear that if you'd like to. But it was episode number 306 of Two Chairs, No Waiting. So 300 episodes later, I put it together, and it's only 25 minutes long. So, you know, back in the old days, like in 10 years ago, you know, this episode that we were just hearing, episode 1, was only 12 minutes long. So I tried to keep them as short as I could. But you can definitely go and hear this full interview that Allan from the past was talking about. So some of the people in the chat room was asking, was Jan in the room when I was recording this? So actually, yeah, she did come in there for a minute and left. So you've got to remember, none of you, I don't know how many of you have actually tried to do a podcast, but it's a little nerve wracking, especially when you first start trying. Many of us are not happy with the way our voice sounds. We hear ourselves talk on the recording, and we don't have it. If somebody tries to get you to talk into a microphone, you start doing like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk in the microphone. I don't want to be heard. I don't want to be seen. Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? I was the same way. I was doing this show so that I could get those interviews out that I had already done, and I wanted people to be able to hear it. And the plan was always to stop the podcast not long after I finished putting out the episodes I had
recorded, or the interviews I'd recorded with some of the cast members. Who knew 10 years later I would still be talking, and hopefully a little better and a little more relaxed, so that I can actually talk to you like a person rather than like a robot, where I kind of sounded like that the whole time. So it's pretty fun to go back and listen to these old episodes. It's kind of painful, but you got to remember, like I said, this was the very beginning. I had never done this. I was basically using a little hand recorder or recording directly. If you're watching the actual video, you actually see it's a program called Audacity, is what the program is called. And it's actually, that's what I recorded the show in. I recorded it directly onto the computer back then. So I would have recorded it directly into the computer, and it split up into different pieces, and, you know, I put it all together. It's way different than I do it now. Because when you get these live shows, I'm doing it basically one shot. You're hearing it, you're seeing it on the video. It's just one long episode, no cuts. Everything's done live. So the music I play is live, changing scenes. If you're watching the videos where things change and you see different stuff, it's all done right here live while I'm doing it. Back in the beginning, I would record it sitting in a room. If I didn't like it, I could just re-record it and do it again. You know, now I've got a live audience that comes in here, and right now in our chat room, we've got about 26 folks. I hadn't lost anybody. I was worried about that since since Allan from 10 years ago sounded like a robot talking. I was afraid people would still ditch me. Now, I do still use Audacity. I do use it, but I don't actually record the podcast into that program. But it's a very good program if you need to do audio editing or anything like that. It works really well. So I definitely encourage the use of Audacity. It's free. So there's, he's a good man, but he's cheap. Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's free. And so I use it to edit my, anything I need to edit. Like at the beginning of the podcast, there's usually some dead air I have to cut out. That means silent time for the non-podcast professional. That's dead air before the show starts or after it's over. And I cut those out and then use that to make the show. All right. So I want to go back in because there was a little special thing I did. It was fun to me to hear what Allan was saying there. Old Allan, young Allan, I guess. Allan minus 10 was talking about the things the podcast was going to do. Well, here's another segment here. This is after the interview with George, and, you know, I start thanking him for what he had done here. So let's go back over there and hear the end of this, because I do say that I'm going to try to do this every week, and I have done it like rarely, but we do have Floyd who shows up on this episode. Let's see what happens here. Let's see.
Yeah, that's right. 40 years. Andy Griffith Show.
40 years ago is how long George was talking about.
It's currently October.
So let's go hear the rest
So we just had the 48th anniversary of the first episode of the Andy Griffith Show. So a lot of times passed, but the show never gets old. Now we're going to do something that we're going to try to do every episode.
Never did it like that.
We're going to have Floyd Lawson.
It was a dream I had.
Floyd's Barbershop.
To do it every week.
Give us some commentary on just his meandering thoughts. Here he is. So, Floyd, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Hello there. How you doing? I've been listening to George there. I don't know him. Goober. I know who that is. Yeah. I don't know this other fella. But, Goober, you know, he and I, he was a lot like me. Yeah, entrepreneur. Yeah. Started his own business. Had a business. Yeah, bought it from Wally, but, he had to, sometimes he'd forget to order the gas. Yes, yeah. Not me, Yeah, there was that time I forgot to get the shaving cream. Yeah. But I never did like the shaving cream anyway, the kind that came out of the bottle or something. I always like to mix it in a cup. Yeah. I just like the sound. It makes it clip. Yeah. I guess if you're not a barber, you might not understand. Yeah, well, that's all I have for today, I guess, and we'll see you later. Hey, drop by the barber shop. We'll get you a trim. Every head's a walking testimony. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, Floyd. Thank you for those wonderful thoughts. We always look forward to the wisdom of a barber. You know, you can't be a barber for as many years as Floyd has been and not learn something. Folks, we hope you enjoyed the first episode of Two Chairs,
No Waiting. There we go.
We look forward to having you
listen to the excitement.
Join us again next time.
Oh my goodness. There was like no energy at all in that. But you know what the reason was? Like I said, I was in the bedroom recording this because I was trying to get it out of the part of the house where it'd be quiet. You know, I was in the bedroom and, you know, you don't want to talk loud. So you're doing like this when you're talking. And of course, now I talk loud. Everybody in the house has to hear this because I talk like a normal, probably even louder than I normally talk to make the podcast. But I just remember being back in the bedroom. Yes, and just thank you for joining us. And it's great to have you. It's almost like you're whispering because you don't want anybody to hear what you're doing. Because first off, like I said, this is my first episode of the podcast. I got no idea how much fun of me people are going to make when they hear it. Of course, now I'm making fun of me. But I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to go. Who knows that 10 years later, I'll still be doing it. And we're getting, I don't know, 1,000 people per episode or so, something along those lines over time. About 500-600 right off the bat. The first week, I get about 600 people, 500-600 people that listen or watch the videos. And then the other, then more over time. But friends, it's been a great ride. I have definitely enjoyed it. I just don't know. I don't know how long I can keep doing it, but it is still fun to me. 10 years have gone by really quickly. So it is fun to think back about all those old days when I started. And you can watch, if you go back and listen to some of those old episodes and listen through them, because all the content I did, pretty much all the content of the podcast, you can go back and listen to now and it's still relevant because most of the stuff I did it's called evergreen, which means you can listen to it at any time. The only ones that might be exceptions are the e-bullet reports that we do every month or two, where we do the e-bullet. Those are a little bit more timely, but it's kind of like a snapshot of time of what was happening at that particular moment. So anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Wow, 10 years. It says 10. Thank you to all of you who have stood by me and watched these episodes and been a part of the show and everything. So thank you. So like I said, this is meta because we're talking about a show. So it's a little bit of nostalgia here about the podcast that's about a nostalgia you have for the Andy Griffith Show, which is your favorite show. So we got nostalgia of nostalgia. That's boom. That's called meta. Now I looked up the word meta and what it actually means. It's meaning of creative work, for instance, that refers to itself or to some conventions of its genre, like it's self-referential. Ooh, big word.
Here's a big word there. He got it out of the Learner word. But yeah, that's a Learner Month magazine. Yeah.
So there you go. So, all right, folks, thank you again for being here with me for 10 years. And Randy Turner has contributed to some of those hours that I told you about, the 7 days and 17 hours or whatever it's been, by doing his weekly, with a very few exceptions, This Week in Mayberry History Report. So let's go and hear from Randy for this week's This Week in Mayberry History.
Welcome to This Week in Mayberry History, a report by special correspondent Randy Turner of the Gomer and Cooper Pyle Comic Book Literary Guild of the Mayberry Historical Society.
Happy 92nd birthday to Julie Adams, born on October 17th, 1926. Julie starred in a number of good films opposite well-known leading men, and appeared in Mayberry as the first love interest to be introduced after Eleanor Donahue left. But she will always be best known for starring in a film opposite a far from handsome leading character. Julie's birth name was Betty Mae Adams when she was born in Iowa. Her family moved often, but did manage to stay in Arkansas during her teen years. After graduating from high school, at the age of 19, Betty Mae was named Miss Little Rock. She moved to Hollywood to try to break into movies. Initially, she worked as a secretary 3 days a week while taking acting and speech lessons and auditioning. 3 years later, she was finally cast in an uncredited part as, appropriately enough, a starlet in the 1949 Betty Hutton film Red, Hot, and Blue. That same year, she made her television debut in the dramatic anthology show Your Showtime. By the way, while it was not for the episode in which she appeared, that series was the very first to win an Emmy Award. That fall, she appeared in her first credited role in the Western The Dalton Gang. While the Western is not particularly well remembered, the studio clearly liked her in the genre and cast her in 7 quickie Western productions, all 7 of which were released in 1950. Betty Mae was then signed by Universal Studios, who promptly changed her name to Julia, a name with which she was never completely comfortable. She was still billed as Julia when she was cast in the role for which she is best known, the lovely Kay Lawrence, the object of the title character's desire in the 1954 3D science fiction classic, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Her popularity in the film was not hurt by the fact that she spent much of her time in shorts or a bathing suit. An urban legend holds that she was actually knocked unconscious when the stuntman playing the creature carried her into a cave and, unable to see clearly due to the creature costume, carried her too close to the edge of the cave, causing her head to be scraped. Julie has said she was not actually knocked out, but of course really did hit her head, though the cave was actually on a soundstage and made of plaster. While the creature may be her best remembered leading man in film, she also appeared in films opposite stars such as Jimmy Stewart, Rock Hudson, Tyrone Power, Charlton Heston, and Elvis. Julie, she had changed her name to Julie from Julia not long after The Creature from the Black Lagoon, as she liked the name better. Julie only appeared in the Andy Griffith Show once. She played County Nurse Mary Simpson in the 1962 episode The County Nurse, and was the first attempt to introduce an ongoing love interest for Andy after Ellie Walker left at the end of Season 1. Julie later co-starred in the 1971-1972 series The Jimmy Stewart Show, playing the wife of Stewart's professor character. She and Stewart had appeared together nearly 20 years earlier in the film Bend of the River. Appearing with Stewart for the single season the show ran was her favorite role. Julie was a frequent guest star throughout her career in series ranging from Alfred Hitchcock Presents to Perry Mason to The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. Julie holds a special distinction on Perry Mason. While she appeared in 4 different episodes between 1963 and 1965, in the second of her 2 1963 episodes, she played the lawyer's only client to be convicted during the 9 years the series was on the air. Julie does hold another distinction that is fun to note. Her name is the first in the alphabetical listing by last name of all credited actors who appeared in the Andy Griffith Show. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. And remember to take Andy's advice and go out there and act like somebody.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you so much for that report. And if you'd like to make sure you don't miss any of the great stuff Randy's doing on the internet, send him an email at turnersgrade@gmail.com, and he'll make sure you don't miss out. turnersgrade@gmail.com. All right. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it so much. Hey, thank you for being here with me and just celebrating a little bit our 10th anniversary of Two Chairs, No Waiting. It's a real blessing, and it's been great getting to know so many people and having people come up to me and say stuff at Mayberry Days and other events saying, hey, I listen to your podcast. Thank you so much. I really enjoy it. And I love hearing that kind of stuff from you. So if you have those kind of words, please feel free to come up and say them to me, because it's fun to hear from you. You can give me a call at 888-684-8415 and let me know what you think. Tell me about it. Next week will be the Halloween episode of Two Chairs No Waiting. Parental warning. So if you get scared like Gomer and Barney, maybe you don't want to listen to that episode. You'll just tune in the next week. But we'll be having some fun next week with a Halloween type show. It won't be Who Stole My Golden Arm this year, because we got 2 versions of that you can already listen to. But it will be a fun one, and it'll be in the same spirit. I think you guys will enjoy it. So folks, have a great Mayberry week, and we'll see you next year for episode number 502. Or should be next week. Bye, everybody.